She thought it was funny to prank me at my birthday party, handing me a box with divorce papers inside. Everyone burst out laughing. I just blew out my candle. 2 days later, she got an envelope from my lawyer. A man's 40th birthday is supposed to be a milestone, a time for reflection, a celebration of how far you've come. My 40th, last Saturday, was definitely a milestone. It was the day I realized my wife of 10 years didn't just not respect me, she actively despised me. And it was the day I decided to return the favor. Let me give you the lay of the land. My name is David, and I own a commercial real estate business. It's a high-stress, high-reward field, and I've done well. My wife Emily is a former art gallery curator who now, in her words, curates our life. In reality, that means she spends her days at yoga, having long lunches with her equally unemployed friends, and spending my money. For a long time, I didn't care. I loved her. I was proud that I could provide a life where she didn't have to work. But over the last few years, something had changed. The gratitude had been replaced by a deep, corrosive entitlement. My role in her life had shifted from partner to provider, from husband to a walking, talking ATM. The jokes at my expense, always in front of her friends, had become more frequent and more cruel. She'd mock my taste in movies, my boring hobbies like fishing, the way I dressed. I was the simple, unsophisticated man who made her lavish lifestyle possible, and she resented me for it. I wasn't a simp. I pushed back. We had fights. Huge, knockdown, drag-out fights. Each one would end with her in tears, accusing me of being a bully, of not being able to take a joke. Then she'd give me the silent treatment for a week, and I, like an idiot, would eventually give in, just to have some peace in my own home. I knew we were in trouble. I had even suggested marriage counseling. She laughed in my face. "We don't need a shrink, David," she'd said. "We just need you to lighten up." So for my 40th birthday, she decided to lighten me up. She threw me a big party at our house, my house, a key detail. All our friends were there. It was a great night, on the surface. Good food, good music, everyone was having a good time. Then came the cake and the presents. I sat at the head of our dining table, a big, ridiculous cake with 40 candles burning in front of me. Everyone gathered around, singing. I was genuinely happy. For a moment, I thought maybe we were going to be okay. Then Emily came out of the kitchen, carrying a single, beautifully wrapped gift box. "I have one more present for you, honey," she said, her voice full of fake sweetness. "This one is from me." She placed the box in front of me. It was heavy. I looked at her, and she had this weird, excited glint in her eye that I had learned to recognize as a precursor to some kind of drama. Her friends, a trio of mean girls I've always despised, were all standing behind her, phones out, recording. I opened the box. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was a thick, leather-bound folder. I opened it. The first page was a professionally printed cover sheet. It read, "The Law Offices of Sterling and Finch," and below that, in big, bold letters, "Petition for Dissolution of Marriage." It was a full, legally formatted set of divorce papers. My name, her name, all our details. She'd gone to a lawyer. She had these drawn up, as a prank. I just stared at it. The room had gone quiet. Then I heard a snicker. It was one of her friends, then another. And then the whole room, her whole side of the room, burst out laughing. It was a loud, cruel, echoing sound. They thought it was the most hilarious thing they had ever seen. I looked up at Emily. She was beaming, a triumphant smile on her face, like she had just delivered the punchline of the century. She was looking at her friends, soaking in their approval. I didn't say a word. I just looked at the papers. I looked at her, laughing at my expense. I looked at the 40 candles on my birthday cake, and then I took a deep breath, leaned forward, and blew them all out. I made a wish, a very specific wish. Then I stood up. I smiled. A real, genuine smile. "Great joke, honey," I said, my voice perfectly calm. "You really got me. Now, if you'll all excuse me, I'm gonna go get us some more champagne." I walked out of the room, and I didn't look back. The party was over. My marriage was over. And my wife had just handed me the greatest birthday present of all. The perfect, ironclad reason to burn her entire world to the ground. Update 1. The rest of the party was a masterclass in acting on my part. I came back with the champagne. I laughed and joked. I played the part of the good sport, the husband who could take a joke, no matter how cruel. Emily and her friends were triumphant. They had proven once again that I was the boring, Predictable guy who would just take whatever they dished out. They had no idea they were celebrating their own execution. As soon as the last guest left, around 2 a.m., I went to my office. I still had the box with the divorce papers. I took them out and looked at them. They were real. She had actually paid a lawyer to draft them. The level of premeditation was astounding. I didn't sleep. I just sat at my desk and started making a list. My revenge couldn't be emotional. It had to be cold, logical, and financially devastating. She had made a joke about our marriage. I was going to make her life a punchline. On Monday morning, I set my plan in motion. The first call was to my lawyer. Not just any lawyer, but the most ruthless divorce attorney in the city, a woman named Diana who was known for taking no prisoners. I told her the story. I emailed her the pictures and videos her friends had so thoughtfully taken of the prank. She was silent for a moment when I was done. Then she just said, "Oh, we're gonna have fun with this." The second call was to a private investigator. I gave him one target, Emily's best friend, a woman named Chloe who was the ringleader of her little coven. I had a suspicion that Chloe's own life wasn't as perfect as she pretended it was. I told the PI to dig. The third call was to my bank. I had a number of joint accounts and credit cards with Emily. Over the next hour, I systematically drained my half of the funds, and I canceled every single card that had her name on it. Her financial lifeline, which was, of course, me, was severed. My final act of the morning was the most satisfying. Emily had a horse, a ridiculously expensive show horse that was her pride and joy. It was her status symbol, the one thing she loved more than anything. The horse was stabled at an exclusive equestrian club. The monthly fees for its upkeep were astronomical, and, of course, they were all paid for by me, on a credit card I had just canceled. I drove out to the stable. I found the owner, a woman I had met a few times. I told her the situation. My wife and I were separating. I would no longer be paying for the horse's expenses. I told her that, as per our agreement, she would need to contact the legal owner of the horse, Emily, to arrange for future payments or the horse's removal. The woman was sympathetic, but business was business. She said she would be in touch with Emily that day. I went home and waited. The first sign that the shockwave had hit was a frantic text from Emily around noon. "My card was just declined at Neiman Marcus. What's going on?" I didn't reply. An hour later, another text. "The stable just called me. They said you're not paying for Star anymore. Is this a joke?" "Because it's not funny, David." I still didn't reply. I just sat in my office, looking at the box of divorce papers she had given me. She got home around 4 o'clock. She stormed into the house, her face a mask of rage. "David, what the hell have you done?" I just looked up from my computer. "I'm just following your lead, honey," I said calmly. "You wanted a divorce. I'm just getting the ball rolling. I thought you'd be pleased." "That was a prank," she shrieked. "A joke. You know I didn't mean it." "Didn't you?" I asked. I stood up and walked over to her. "You went to a lawyer, Emily. You had official documents drafted. You and your friends planned it. You filmed it. That's not a joke. That's a dress rehearsal. And you know what? It convinced me. You were right all along. We should get a divorce." "You can't do this," she cried. "I can," I said, "and I am. My lawyer will be sending your lawyer, the one you so thoughtfully provided the name of, an official response to your petition tomorrow. I suggest you find a way to pay for him because I won't be. And I suggest you find a way to pay for your horse, and your car, and your lunches, because the Bank of David is officially closed." I turned and walked back to my office and closed the door. I could hear her screaming and throwing things in the living room. It was the sound of a woman who had just realized that the joke was and always had been on her. Update 2. The days that followed were a blur of legal maneuvering and escalating desperation on her part. My lawyer, Diana, was a shark. She filed a counter-petition for divorce on the grounds of extreme cruelty. Her primary piece of evidence? The videos of my birthday party, which Emily's own friends had so conveniently filmed. The judge, Diana told me, was not amused by the prank. Emily's life began to unravel with breathtaking speed. With her credit cards canceled and her bank account empty, she was suddenly broke. The equestrian club gave her a 1-week deadline to either pay the thousands of dollars she owed in back fees, or they would be forced to sell her horse to cover the debt. Her car, which was leased in my name, was repossessed from the driveway of her parents' house, where she had been forced to move back in. Her friends, the ones who had laughed so hard at my humiliation, were suddenly nowhere to be found. It's funny how quickly people disappear when the person who pays for the champagne brunch is no longer paying. Then came the report from the private investigator, and it was better than I could have ever imagined. Chloe, the maid of honor and ringleader, was having an affair with the husband of another woman in their friend group. The PI got photos, he got hotel receipts, he got everything. I didn't do anything with the information at first. I just held it. It was my ace in the hole. The final confrontation came about a month after the party. We had a mandatory settlement conference with our lawyers. Emily and I sitting on opposite sides of a long, polished table. She had spent the last month trying to launch a smear campaign against me, telling everyone I was an abusive, controlling monster with no sense of humor. Her lawyer started by making a series of outrageous demands. She wanted the house. She wanted half of my business. She wanted lifelong alimony. When he was done, Diana just smiled. "That's a very impressive work of fiction," she said. She then laid out our position. Emily would be getting nothing. Not the house, not a penny for my business. In fact, we would be demanding that she reimburse me for her half of our shared debts, which, without my income to pay them off, were substantial. Her lawyer just laughed. "On what grounds?" "On the grounds that your client entered into this marriage under fraudulent pretenses," Diana said, her voice like ice, "and on the grounds of her well-documented history of cruelty and infidelity." "Infidelity?" Emily's lawyer said, looking confused. "There are no allegations of infidelity in your petition." "Not on my client's part, no," Diana said, "but we do have some interesting information about your client's social circle." And then I made my move. I looked directly at Emily. "I know about Chloe and Steve," I said quietly. The color drained from her face. Chloe was her best friend, her alibi for 100 different shopping trips and mysterious late nights. Steve was the husband of her other best friend, Amanda. "If this goes to court," I continued, "your friends will be subpoenaed. They will have to testify under oath about what they knew, about the affair, about the prank, about everything." "Is that really a can of worms you want to open, Emily? Are you willing to burn down your entire life and the lives of your friends just to try and get a piece of mine?" She just stared at me, her mouth open. She looked at her lawyer, who was looking at her with a new dawning horror. "Or," I said, leaning forward, "you can sign the papers. You can walk away with what you came into this marriage with, nothing, and we can both move on. The choice is yours." Final update: it has been 6 months. The divorce was finalized 2 weeks after that meeting. She signed the papers. She took the deal. She had no choice. The threat of mutual assured destruction was the one language she understood. Her life, from what I hear, is a complete and utter disaster. The story of Chloe's affair, as I knew it would, came out. The friend group imploded in a spectacular fashion. Amanda, the wronged wife, filed for divorce and took her husband for everything he had. Chloe is now a social pariah. And Emily, with her 2 best friends no longer speaking to her, is completely alone. She had to sell her horse. The equestrian club put it up for auction, and I heard it went for a fraction of what I had paid for it. She is still living with her parents, working some low-level job that she hates. The life of curated perfection she had built for herself was a house of cards, and all it took was one little push to bring it all crashing down. I saw her once, a few weeks ago. I was at a restaurant, one of mine, doing a spot check on the kitchen. She was there, on a date with some guy who looked as slick and phony as she was. She saw me. The look on her face was a mixture of fear and pure, uncut hatred. She and her date left a few minutes later. The ultimate revenge wasn't about the money, or the house, or the horse. It was about taking away her power. Her power was in her social standing, her friendships, her ability to manipulate people. All I did was hold up a mirror and show her, and everyone else, who she really was. A cruel, entitled bully who thought her husband's love and respect were a joke. She wanted to hand me divorce papers as a prank. In the end, I was the one who handed them to her for real. She thought she was the one who could walk away at any time. But I was the one who walked away first. She thought she was in control. But in the end, The only thing she controlled was her own spectacular downfall. My life is quiet now. It's peaceful, and it's mine, all mine. She thought it would be funny to tell her bridesmaids, if he cries at the altar, I'll walk away. They all screamed with laughter. I heard everything. On the wedding day, they were the ones crying when the ceremony never happened. I'm writing this from a hotel suite that was supposed to be my honeymoon suite. The champagne is cold, the view of the ocean is perfect, and the king-size bed is ridiculously comfortable. It's also completely empty, except for me. And honestly, I've never felt more at peace. 3 days ago, I was supposed to get married. Instead, I produced the most satisfying, most expensive, and shortest-running theatrical performance of my entire career. The show closed on opening night, and the cast is still crying. It all started, as these things often do, with a single, carelessly spoken line. It was the night of our rehearsal dinner, the final run-through before the big show. I was standing just outside the private dining room, on the phone with my production accountant, finalizing the last of the payments for the wedding. My fiancée, Jessica, was inside with her bridesmaids, a coven of women who smiled with their teeth and judged with their eyes. Her maid of honor and best friend, a particularly venomous woman named Olivia, was the ringleader. I finished my call and walked back towards the room. The door was slightly ajar. I could hear them all laughing inside, that high-pitched, sharp-edged laughter that means a joke has been made at someone's expense. As I reached for the door handle, I heard Olivia's voice, clear as a bell. But seriously, Jess, are you nervous at all? About, the finality of it all? And then came Jessica's reply, the line that detonated my entire world. She sighed, a dramatic, long-suffering sound, and said, "Oh God, I'm mostly just nervous he's going to cry at the altar." Can you imagine how embarrassing that would be? If he starts blubbering, I swear to God, I'll turn around and walk away. The room exploded. Not just laughter, but shrieks of delight. It was the funniest thing they had ever heard. The idea of me, their stable, reliable, emotional rock, showing a moment of genuine vulnerability, was so hilarious that it was cause for celebration. And her response to threaten public humiliation in that sacred moment was seen as the ultimate power move. I stood there, hidden by the door, and I didn't feel a thing. No anger, no sadness, no shock. It was the kind of profound, icy clarity I get in the final moments before a show opens, when I can see the entire production laid out in my mind, and I know, with absolute certainty, that a critical set piece is about to fail. Let me be clear. I am not a wimp. I am not a doormat. I am a theatrical producer and director. My entire life is about creating and controlling a narrative. I manage million-dollar budgets, command crews of hundreds, and I take a simple idea written on a page and turn it into a living, breathing spectacle. I understand lighting, sound, staging, and most importantly, I understand audiences. I know how to make them feel exactly what I want them to feel. My relationship with Jessica had been a 2-year production. I had met her when she was a struggling actress. I was captivated by her ambition and what I thought was a deep, untapped well of talent. I wasn't a simp paying her bills, I was an investor. I saw her as a leading lady in the making. I took her on as my personal project. I paid for new headshots, I funded acting classes with the best coaches in the city. I used my connections to get her auditions she could never have dreamed of. I was producing the story of her success. Our engagement wasn't just a romance. It was the logical next step in our co-production. For 2 years I had ignored the warning signs. I saw her growing entitlement, her casual cruelty disguised as jokes, and the toxic influence of Olivia and her other friends. I saw it all as the behavior of a starlet finding her footing. I thought I could direct her away from her worst impulses. I thought I could cultivate the talent and edit out the flaws. That comment, overheard through a crack in a door, was my final production note. It was the moment I realized I had made a catastrophic casting error. The actress wasn't just flawed, she was fundamentally miscast in the role of a loving partner. The production was a guaranteed flop, and a good producer never ever lets a doomed show open. You don't just cancel it, you shut it down, you recoup your losses, and you make damn sure the people responsible for the failure understand the consequences. I didn't go back into the room. I turned around, walked out of the restaurant, and got in a taxi. As I rode home, I wasn't thinking about our relationship. I was rewriting the script for the final act of our production. The wedding was still happening. But the story had changed. It was no longer a romance. It was a tragedy, and the bridesmaids were about to give the performance of their lives. Update 1. The 24 hours between the rehearsal dinner and the wedding morning were the most intense, focused, and creative period of my professional life. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I just worked. I was a man possessed by a new radical vision for my show. The first thing I did when I got back to my apartment was go into my office and lock the door. I had a complete production Bible for the wedding. A massive binder with every contract, every invoice, every contact number, every schedule. It was the blueprint for the event. It was now the blueprint for my revenge. My first call was to my best man, my brother Mark. I told him everything. He wasn't surprised. He'd never liked Jessica, and he'd loathed Olivia for years. He listened patiently, and when I was done, he just said, "What do you need me to do, brother? I'm your stage manager." With my key ally in place, I began to systematically dismantle and reassemble the entire wedding day. The theme was no longer happily ever after. The new theme was consequences. The bridesmaids were my primary target. They had laughed at my potential emotional pain. My goal was to orchestrate a morning of pure, unadulterated, logistical, and emotional distress for them, while Jessica remained blissfully unaware. At 2 a.m., I started making calls. First, I called the luxury transport company I had hired to shuttle the bridal party around in a white stretch limo. I canceled the limo. Then I called a local, notoriously unreliable taxi service and booked 3 standard, slightly grimy cabs to arrive at their hotel an hour later than the original limo was scheduled. Next, the hair and makeup team. I had hired the best in the city, a team of 4 artists who were scheduled to arrive at the bridal suite at 8 a.m. I called the lead artist, a woman I knew from a previous show. I explained there was a catastrophic scheduling error and that I needed her and her entire team at my hotel for my mother and my aunts at 7 a.m. sharp. I doubled her fee for the inconvenience. I then hired a single, barely out of beauty school student from a Craigslist ad to go to the bridal suite at 9 a.m. Her instructions were to do her best. The bridesmaid dresses, they were beautiful, custom-designed silk gowns that had cost a small fortune. They had been delivered to my apartment a week prior. I had them all, hanging in a spare room. At 4 a.m., I took a pair of scissors. I didn't destroy them. That would be too obvious. I just made a series of small, precise, and utterly ruinous cuts. A small 2-inch slice along the zipper seam of one. A subtle but irreparable tear in the shoulder of another. I did this to all 5 dresses. Then I repackaged them in their garment bags, ready for delivery. The final touch for the morning was the food and drink. I had arranged for a beautiful spread of pastries, fruit, and expensive champagne to be delivered to their suite. I canceled it. In its place, I ordered 5 lukewarm coffees and a single sad-looking box of gas station donuts. While these logistical bombs were being planted, I focused on the main event, the ceremony itself. The venue was a stunning old theater I had booked, a place where I had staged my first successful play. The symbolism was perfect. I called my production crew, my lighting designer, my sound engineer, my video team. I told them there was a last-minute, radical change to the show's concept. I paid them each a handsome bonus for their flexibility and their silence. We worked through the night, redesigning the entire production. The wedding video, which was supposed to be a heartwarming montage of photos of me and Jessica, was scrapped. In its place, my video editor and I created something new. I had a secret weapon. A few months ago, I had installed a series of high-quality, voice-activated audio recorders in our apartment. It was a security measure. I work with a lot of high-profile, sometimes difficult artists, and I've learned to document everything. I had hours of audio of Jessica and Olivia talking about me, about the wedding, about their plans for my money after we were married. We spent the night editing the most damning clips into a 7-minute audio montage, a highlight reel of their greed and contempt. This audio would be the centerpiece of the new ceremony. By sunrise, the new show was ready. Every cue was planned, every light was programmed, every trap was set. I sent a final text to Mark. The house is open. Let the performance begin. Then I took a shower, put on my custom-made tuxedo, and waited. The frantic, confused texts from Jessica started arriving around 8:30 a.m. The makeup artists are an hour late. Did you cancel the champagne? They brought us donuts. Where are the dresses? The courier hasn't shown up yet. I replied to each one with calm, reassuring lies. Don't worry, darling, everything is under control. Just a few small hiccups. I'll handle it. I love you. I was directing my final scene with her, and she had no idea she was about to be written out of the show. Update 2. The morning of the wedding was, by all accounts, a logistical apocalypse for the bridal party. Mark, my brother, was my mole on the ground. He was feeding me real-time updates while pretending to be the frantic go-between, trying to fix all the problems. The beauty school student I'd hired for hair and makeup arrived an hour and a half late, armed with a tackle box of cheap drugstore makeup. The bridesmaids, who were used to the best, apparently almost had a collective aneurysm. There were tears. There was shouting. The student, to her credit, soldiered on, giving them makeup that Mark described as aggressively amateur. The dresses finally arrived, delivered by a courier I'd paid to get lost for 2 hours. The moment of discovery, when they zipped them up and found the carefully placed rips and tears, was, according to Mark, a symphony of shrieking. Olivia's zipper apparently split completely, leaving the back of her dress wide open. They had to be literally sewn into them with a hotel sewing kit. The 3 sad taxis showed up just as they were all on the verge of a complete meltdown. They piled into the cramped, coffee-stained back seats, their ruined silk dresses bunching up around them, their cheap makeup starting to run in the heat. All the while, I was at the theater, calm and collected. I greeted the guests as they arrived. My family, her family, our friends. Everyone was smiling, excited. They had no idea the show they were about to see was not the one they had bought tickets for. The ceremony was scheduled for 2 p.m. I had my crew hold the house doors until 2:15, letting the tension build. The guests were seated. The string quartet I had hired was playing softly. I walked to the altar and took my place. Mark stood beside me, giving me a small, almost imperceptible nod. At 2:20, the music changed. The traditional wedding march began to play. The huge, ornate doors at the back of the theater swung open, and there they were. Jessica, on her father's arm, looking beautiful, but visibly stressed. And behind her, the bridesmaids, a glorious tableau of misery. Their hair was slightly frizzy, their makeup was a disaster, and their dresses were clearly safety-pinned and stitched together. They looked like the cast of a tragedy that had been mugged on the way to the theater. They began their slow walk down the aisle. The guests smiled, oblivious to the drama. As they reached the front, the bridesmaids took their places. Olivia shot me a look of pure venom. She thought this was all just a series of unfortunate accidents. She still thought she was in control. Jessica arrived at the altar. Her father placed her hand in mine. She gave me a tight, angry smile. "You have a lot of explaining to do," she whispered. "I know," I said and squeezed her hand. I turned to the officiant, an actor I had hired the day before. He smiled benevolently at the crowd. "Welcome, friends and family," he began. "We are gathered here today to witness a performance. A story of love, ambition, and the high cost of a bad investment." A confused murmur rippled through the crowd. Jessica's smile vanished. She looked at me, her eyes wide with confusion. I gave a small signal to my sound engineer in the booth at the back of the theater. The lights in the house dimmed, and a single, harsh spotlight hit Jessica and her bridesmaids. Then the sound of her own voice filled the theater, crisp and clear through the state-of-the-art sound system. It was the audio montage. The first clip was her, talking to Olivia on the phone a month ago. "Of course I don't love him like I love Derek, but he's stable. He's a good provider. Think of it as a stepping stone." The guests gasped. Jessica's face went white. She tried to pull her hand away, but I held it fast. The next clip was Olivia's voice. "Just make sure you get your name on the house deed before you have kids. My lawyer said that's the most important thing." Then another clip of Jessica, laughing. "Don't worry, I've got it all planned out. 2 years of marriage, then I'll have enough to start my own lifestyle brand without him." It went on for 7 minutes. 7 minutes of their own words, their own greed, their own contempt, broadcast in perfect, high-fidelity audio for everyone they had ever known to hear. The final clip was the one from the rehearsal dinner. Her voice, echoing through the silent theater. "If he starts blubbering, I swear to God, I'll turn around and walk away. When the audio ended, the silence in the room was absolute. Every eye was on the 5 women trapped in the spotlight. They were frozen, their faces masks of pure, unadulterated horror. I finally let go of Jessica's hand. I took the microphone from the officiant. "A good production requires a talented and committed cast," I said, my voice resonating through the theater. "And as the producer and director of this particular show, I have come to the conclusion that my leading lady and her supporting cast are unprofessional, untrustworthy, and fundamentally unsuited for their roles." I looked directly at Jessica. "The part of my wife is no longer available to you. Your contract is terminated." Then I turned to the stunned audience. The wedding is, of course, canceled. However, the reception, or as I am now calling it, the wrap party, will proceed as scheduled, next door. Please enjoy the open bar, the food, and the band. I believe we have something to celebrate after all, the closing of a very bad show. Final update: it has been a week since the performance. The fallout has been, to put it mildly, biblical. The scene at the theater after my announcement was chaos. Jessica's father tried to lunge at me, but he was held back by my groomsmen. Jessica just stood there, completely catatonic, until her mother led her away. But the bridesmaids, they were the ones who truly broke. They started crying. Not quiet, delicate tears, but ugly, gasping sobs of pure humiliation. They were trapped on a stage under the glare of a spotlight, with hundreds of people staring at their ruined faces and their ruined reputations. They tried to flee, but the aisle was clogged with stunned guests. It was the most satisfying standing ovation I have ever witnessed. The wrap party was, surprisingly, a huge success. About half the guests left, mostly from her side of the family. But my family, my friends, and even some of her more distant relatives who had never liked her, stayed. The mood shifted from shock to a kind of wild celebratory relief. People kept coming up to me, shaking my hand, telling me I had done the right thing. The band played, we danced, we drank. It was the best wedding I have ever been to. The days that followed were a storm of communication, all of which I routed through my lawyer. Jessica's parents threatened to sue me for, well, they weren't sure what for. Humiliation, I think. My lawyer politely informed them that all I had done was play a recording of their daughter's own words in a private venue I had rented. There was nothing they could do. The financial consequences for them have been severe. I had a rock-solid prenuptial agreement, which is now void, of course, because we never got married. Every single vendor, every deposit, every payment for that $100,000 wedding was in my name from my accounts. They had contributed nothing. I canceled the honeymoon suite, the flower arrangements, everything that could be canceled. The non-refundable deposits were a loss, but I consider it the best money I have ever spent. I also sent a final, itemized invoice to Jessica's father. It was for the acting classes, the headshots, the networking events, and all the other investments I had made in his daughter's failed career. The total was just over $75,000. I didn't expect him to pay it. It was just a final, professional courtesy. A closing statement for our co-production. As for the bridesmaids, their social lives are in utter ruin. The audio recording, which was leaked online by an anonymous source, has made them pariahs. Olivia has apparently deleted all of her social media and is refusing to leave her apartment. The others are in a similar state. Jessica, I heard, had a complete breakdown. Her parents had to take her out of the city to stay with relatives. The lifestyle brand she was planning to build on the foundation of my money is now just a sad, pathetic punchline. And me, I'm here. In this beautiful hotel room that was supposed to be the start of a lie. Instead, it's the start of something true. My life. On my terms. My revenge wasn't loud or violent, it was theatrical. I just built a stage, provided the lighting and sound, and let the antagonists speak their own lines. And in the end, they got exactly what they deserved. A bad review.